Thank you very much, and I understand now we are on, so we can start this webinar. Good morning, good afternoon to all, because I understand you are all connecting from a number of different countries. I know participants are joining from North America, from Europe, of course, from Africa. So dear participants, colleagues and friends, thank you so much for joining this high-level conference. We will discuss creative industry, the impact of digital, and how to support a sustainable recovery in Africa. I'm Patrick Gilabert, the head of the Unido office in Brussels and the representative to the UNOSCPS. And today, I'm glad to facilitate this conference organized in the framework of the 2021 International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. The United Nations, the UN, recognize that creative economy is the most rapidly growing sector of the world economy. In terms of revenue, it generates more than $2 trillion worldwide, so $2 trillion worldwide, which represents 3% of global GDP worldwide. And job creation is 29.5 million jobs around the world, so we can really see the weight and the importance of the creative economy in the world and for sustainable development. In Africa and in Middle East, it provides to the region $58 billion and it provides 2.4 million jobs. So we can see the importance of the creative economy. That's why Unido, UNCTAD and Sound Diplomacy are working together, joining forces with important partners from Germany, European Commission and Africa. We will focus on Africa to show best practices in East and West Africa. We will explore the importance of innovation and digital transformation in the creative sector and how they contribute towards the recovery from COVID-19 crisis and the achievement of SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. For you to know, the conference is available in English and French. Vous pouvez donc suivre cette conférence en français aussi. And participants are welcome to ask questions and share comments in a Q&A and chat box. So I'd like to introduce our panelists of this session. And the high-level representative and high-level session will be run by Mrs. Mio Shirotori, the officer in charge of the Division of International Trade and Committees of UNCTAD, by Mr. Bernardo Calzadia Sarmiento, Managing Director, Digitalization, Technology and Agribusiness from Unido, and Mrs. Frédéric Karcher, the Head of Division of Media, Culture, Creative Industry, Sports of the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. But I would like to start to call Mio for the first statement. Mio, you have the floor. Please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Merci beaucoup. It is a great honor for UNCTAD to address this very important meeting on digitalizing creative industries with a special focus on Africa. I'd like to thank Unido and Sound Diplomacy for the partnership that has made this meeting come true in the framework of the Global Services Forum 2021. Distinguished panelists and participants, the fast-paced technological and social changes are expanding the scope, potential, and uptake of the creative industries at the global level. The interdependence between the creative world and the digital world is astoundingly clear. Creative content gives life to the digital world, and at the same time, the digital environment enables many of the levers of the creative industry, such as writing, designing, audiovisuals, application software, music, performance art, research and development, among many. In fact, digital technologies and tools have transformed the entire cultural value chain, from creation to production, distribution, access to the market, and participation. And this, to an extent, has contributed towards inclusive recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. Artists have tuned to digital platforms to connect with audiences and consumers. While digital solutions cannot replace the value and the beauty of a live show, they nevertheless have sustained their living. Distinguished panelists and participants, as connectivity increases in countries, including countries in Africa, the supply of quality content is increasing together with the demand for more creative goods and services. Since the creation of the Creative Economy Program in 2004, UNCTAD has continually supported countries to better understand the economic contribution of the creative industries from the perspective of trade and development. UNCTAD continues to work with countries to engage policymakers, creative entrepreneurs, and other relevant stakeholders to collectively identify a policy framework that works for every creative soul in the country. We also note that the nexus between digitalization and creative economy encompasses new issues such as big data capture and analytics, augmented or virtual reality, artificial intelligence, blockchain, digital marketing, and so on and so forth. All those which are likely to control our economic activities in the coming decades. And on this, UNCTAD is publishing a new research titled The Creative Industries 4.0 to contribute to effective policy making on creative industries through the lens of digitalization. Distinguished panelists and participants, technological advances have created opportunities for all to access global markets for their creativity and cultural diversity in a way not ever previously possible. Nonetheless, the challenges are immense and should not be underestimated. So I'd like to conclude my remarks here with the assurance that UNCTAD remains committed, together with the partners Unido and Sound Diplomacy, to strengthening creative economies for better, more inclusive and sustainable future. Thank you very much. I now hand back to you, Mr. Patrick Gilbert.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Miyoshiro-Tori. We really value this partnership and this cooperation with UNCTAD, and definitely we look at the nexus of the creative economy and digital economy as really a very important key to advance for sustainable development goals. And this partnership, Unido-UNCTAD, is really, really important. I'd like to call on now Mr. Bernardo Calzadilla-Sarmiento, the Managing Director of the Directorate of Digitalization, Technology and Agribusiness in Unido. Bernardo, over to you.
Bonjour, Patrick, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Shiritorium, Ms. Kerha, I am so happy to be here with you and on behalf of Unido to introduce this webinar, Create, Innovate, Recover, Digitalizing Creative Industries for a Sustainable Recovery in Africa, organized in association with UNCTAD. Madame Shiro-Tori already started the seminar, and Sound Diplomacy. We have over the many years having an excellent collaboration with UNCTAD, and it is a natural response to find another area and thematic area to collaborate in close complementarity of our mandates that after all are industry and trade. We also welcome Sound Diplomacy, which uses music and culture. And this is a very important new dimension to deliver economic, social, and cultural growth in cities globally. Distinguished panelists and members of the audience, it is important to state that industry consists not only just of factory floors and chimney stacks, but also fashion studios, mixing desks, which can also add considerable value. African creative industries are rich with potential for economic diversification, value addition, technology development, and economic growth. It is thus no surprise that the United Nations declared 2021 as the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement has also recognized the potential of creative industries promoting innovation, entrepreneurship through the protection of intellectual property rights of African entrepreneurs. According to a 2015 report, the creative industries provided Africa and Middle East region $58 billion in revenues and 2.4 million, 2.5 million jobs. And these figures are on the rise. For instance, it is estimated that Nigerian Nollywood film sector alone employs up to 1 million people, directly and indirectly. Likewise, the entertainment sector in Ghana is forecasted to be worth of $3 billion by 2023. We are talking business. However, in order to deliver on the transformative potential of creative industries, we must first put in place the building blocks to upscale capacities, particularly digital capacities. We have seen in COVID the importance and relevance of digital transformation, but also the risk of digital divide. In addition, we must cooperate with local partners to address a number of pressing issues, such as implement IP regimes, underdeveloped innovation ecosystems, a lack of regional trade and value chain integration, weak data collection capacities, and last but not least, insufficient investment in digital infrastructure. To overcome these issues, we need to put in place a comprehensive package of technical cooperation, policy and partnership assistance. We must upscale digital technology access to connectivity, and we must build the human resources. We must build these digital skills, particularly for more vulnerable population, for women, for young people. Design agile, dynamic and responsive regulatory frameworks. This is very important. We must make sure that regulation does not hamper innovation and creativity, boost statistical capacities, and leverage industrial clusters, incubators, accelerators, and spin-off processes. Unido has supported the growth and development of creative industries in many countries, recognizing the importance of combining culture with innovation, digital transformation, and entrepreneurship. Partnerships and collaborative approaches are necessary to this end. For instance, together with the EU and Italy, we have developed 13 creative industries clusters in 7 southern Mediterranean countries. Unido will continue cooperating closely with donors, the UN agencies, national and regional actors, the private sector, creative professionals, and others to enhance their creative economy ecosystem. We look forward to leveraging creative capacities for inclusive, sustainable industrialization, improved trade, poverty eradication, as per our goal number 9 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Thank you so much and wish you wonderful deliberations. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your statement, Bernardo. And indeed, you said the creative economy is so important with 2.4 million jobs. It's really, really important. And that's a very important element to achieve, as we said, the Sustainable Development Goals in the framework of an inclusive and sustainable development. So we have heard from the UN family with UNCTAD, with Unido, And now we will move on to the EU family with Germany. So we are so glad to welcome Mrs. Frederik Kascher, the head of Division of Media, Culture, Creative Industries and Sports of the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany. Dear Frederik Kascher, you have the floor. Thank you.
Merci, Patrick Gilabert, Ms. Shirotori, Mr. Sabiento, dear Excellencies, distinguished colleagues in various countries, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining our session today. Before I start, let me express my gratitude to UNCTAD and Unido and Sound Diplomacy for organizing this event at the margins of UNCTAD 15. It comes at a very timely moment, not only because we are currently celebrating the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development, but also because the interface of creative industries, digitalization, and the current pandemic context that we have really carry possible solutions and relief. So I think it's a very important issue to discuss today, and I'm delighted to be able to contribute. Let me also say that I do have a small personal link to UNCTAD. I worked in Geneva at the permanent mission about 14 years ago, and I remember very lively debates at the Intergovernmental Committee of UNCTAD. And you may know that our Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, Dr. Gerd Müller, is currently running for the new Secretary General of Unido, and was in fact a driving force for us here in Germany to include creative industries in our development cooperation portfolio. It's still relatively new. We started cooperation about 3 years ago, so I would like to share with you a few of the reasons why we consider this a very important topic and important sector in the context of development cooperation, what we see as challenges and what we actually do. So we've already heard that we are really dealing with a future market here with high growth rates. And just to give you a few examples, or actually it's in this case, it's just one example, but there are many countries that could be listed. But I picked Nigeria because I think we will have colleagues from Nigeria on the panel later on. In Nigeria, the music industry is growing with an annual rate of 13.4%. That's quite impressive. The film production in Nigeria is the second largest after Bollywood. That means larger than Hollywood. And the film industry contributes more to the national GDP than, for example, the agricultural sector. And we need more of these messages to go out there, not just to ministers of culture, but to ministers of finance and economy. Those are the ones we need to reach to put corresponding policies in place. The sector also attracts international investments. Let me just name a few: Universal Music, Sony, Netflix. Luckily, there are increasingly more films from Africa that are shared worldwide. So we have platforms to actually share these wonderful creations with the world, much more so than only a few years ago. Another very good reason is that the creative industries create jobs and income, especially for women and young people, young entrepreneurs. So very important target groups of development cooperation. So in many of our partner countries, mainly women are involved in the creative industries. And in Africa, actually 1/5 of the young population, of the young labor force, is engaged in the creative industries. Then, of course, the sector is a driver of innovation and an incubator for the labor force of tomorrow. I want to name one word, and that is cross-innovation and spillover effects into classical economic areas, because very often young creative entrepreneurs, they find solutions for current challenges and they turn them into new business models. For example, video on demand as answer to a lack of movie theaters, and the fact that most people actually do almost everything via their mobile telephones. Then offering gaming services in schools to be as close to real life and practical experiences as possible, or to also use crowdfunding to finance new products. This also leads me to the next issue, that is that it contributes to digital transformation, which is really at the core of our topic today. And the creative industries really fosters digital transformation. For example, virtual reality is used for online showrooms in the fashion industry. And another very important issue, that's the last one I will name here, but I think one that is crucial, is that it really is a mirror of the continent of opportunity when we speak about Africa. And that is so important. We need the good news from Africa. It is not just crises, conflict, and catastrophe, but it really is a country of opportunity, very creative, self-confident, with a very strong young labor force. And I think we need to consider creativity as a resource, like any other resource, like coltan, any other resource, and it needs to be treated and traded in the same way, meaning we also need fair labor standards, fair wages in the creative industries. So I would also like to call for a fair culture movement. And Germany has worked on this issue together with the German National Commission of UNESCO. We are currently in the process of working on a study on this topic, how to bring together the creative sector with the fair trade movement. And for these aspects, we need partners like the EU, because they are much broader than just the scope that one country can actually address. So we need the EU, we need to go on a higher level, which is why we welcome this session so much. So hopefully by the end of today's session, we will have new ways and avenues for cooperation between the national, EU, but also, of course, UN level. Of course, there are challenges. You have mentioned a few. Training with practical exercises is very important. Infrastructure, places where culture and creativity can actually be produced. Access to finance is another issue. Intellectual property, very important. One thing is to produce creative and cultural goods. The other then is to actually make money with them. And then, of course, you need to consider intellectual property rights and make sure that the funds go to the right person. And we need corresponding government policies, tax rebates, incentives for investments. And that's why we do not get tired of saying we need to bring in the ministers of economy and finance to actually acknowledge this future market and act upon that. Let me close by just highlighting what we actually do, German Development Corporation. We have a project that is engaged in 6 countries currently in Africa and the Middle East. In Africa, we're engaged in Kenya, Senegal, South Africa, and we also work with Iraq, Jordan, and Lebanon. We have a unique cooperation of GIZ, German International Corporation, and the Goethe Institute. So we bring together one institute that is very well connected on the level of the creative scene with development partners and development cooperation. And of course, we support training, we strengthen entrepreneurship, we give marketing support. Another very important issue to improve the service offers for the industry. So business service organizations, the lobby for the whole sector needs to be strengthened. And of course, the formalization of the sector, that's actually also another big challenge. During Corona, we actually increased our funds to strengthen resilience for the companies and the partners we work with, and offered a mix of grants and additional training with a specific focus on digital skills. And I could go on, there are many more specific examples. We work with the animation sector in South Africa, which includes a lot of digital instruments with the Fakugezi African Digital Innovation Festival there. So we really try to bring these two aspects together. I don't want to go on too long, so I will come to an end here, but let me say that we are very open to taking our cooperation to the next level, so to say, and work closely with the EU, UN, but also, of course, other bilateral donors and partners. Thank you, and back to you, Patrick.
Merci beaucoup, Frederica Scher. Thank you. Dankeschön for this statement and so many ideas of partnership and cooperation. Indeed, the creative economy is the opportunity to connect with so many entities. You mentioned Ministry of Culture, which should be connected with and which should work with the Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Industry. And already here in this session, we see so many relations and connection within the UN, as we said, Unido and UNCTAD, and of course the other UN entities within the 27 EU member states and Germany. And we will hear from the European Commission. And of course, as you said, that's really true, we need to get good news from Africa. And good news from Africa, we will receive plenty of good news from the panelists, I'm sure, because we have such a large and wide panelists available this morning from East and West Africa. But before we hear from the panelists, I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, Alejandro. Alejandro is Executive Officer of the Directorate of Digitalization, Technology and Agribusiness of Unido. And Alejandro, so we are eager to see your presentation because I understand you will present creative industries with very concrete examples in countries such as in Ethiopia, Armenia, Tunisia, and Cuba. And Cuba, Unido worked in the field of music industry. So Alejandro, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I will share my screen. Yeah, everybody can see my screen, no? Okay. Well, thank you very much. As I have been very excited hearing all the distinguished speakers and in the press session and the opening. And I would like to just provide a very brief overview of creative industry context in Africa, how digitalization can contribute to boost productivity, but also regional development, etc. I will talk, as Patrick mentioned, on some selected experiences and what we should go in the future, where we should go. Okay, just a brief overview. Yeah, most of us has here or have an opinion on what is a creative industry. There are several definitions provided by UNESCO, UNCTAD, WIPO, etc. But they all have some aspects in common, and we see creative industries as a commodities, as a value chain where we include their trade, labor, and productivity. Yeah, and these are all part of a knowledge-based economic activities upon which the creative industries are based. On the other side, it composes several subsectors, and particularly what is bringing a lot of attention is the possibility on the job creation, on the amount of jobs that is currently involving worldwide with the figures that we have been hearing from the previous speakers. One aspect that is very relevant also for the creative industry, and if you compare, for example, the share with the global economy, they are even higher than agriculture, which provide us a good hint to where we should also invest our efforts, yeah, for developing countries in particular. On the other side, digital economy is also providing a lot of let's say, importance in order to reach really how we can distribute this amount of revenues. This is also something that is challenging at the same time. For Africa in particular, there is, as I mentioned, there is an untapped economic potential, particularly considering all the different developments in Nigeria, South Africa, in many countries, Kenya, etc., around the entire continent. However, there are still challenges, as were mentioned before. Particularly, sub-Saharan African market is still poorly structured, with and cultural goods are largely provided through the informal economy, yeah, which is employing more than 500,000 people and generates at the same time 4.2 billion in revenues. So the formal creative industry has also suffered from lack of access to capital in many countries, and this needs to be changed. And there are some steps that has been doing from some regional organizations, but also UN organizations, particularly with the EU support, with other partners, international partners. We can try to move ahead in order to really achieve the inclusive and sustainable development of these creative industries. More particularly, if we see there are some common strengths, yeah, that the African creative industries can provide, yeah, at this moment. We all know that they are very rich in the cultural aspects, and also there is increasing connectivity at this moment. Innovation is really spreading around the entire continent with several innovation labs and other initiatives for startups, etc. At the same time, there are several challenges, particularly regarding informality, as I mentioned, inconsistent approaches to IPR. This is a very challenging topic, and any intervention should consider that one. At the same time, opportunities, yes, a lot of them, particularly the single digital market that is being discussed within the AFTA agreement is something that provides a lot of opportunities for the future. And capacity building activities, these are things that, or elements that could really help. One aspect related to trade, to fair trade. So we see here a potential for improving policy and the regulatory framework, particularly regarding standards and regulations. This can also help not to stop the development of the industry, but to boost innovation and creativity in a proper way, but also trying to rescue the informal market. When we talk about digitalization of creative industry, there is a spread of new technologies coming to result in the market already, particularly if we see, for example, blockchain is impacting on how even the artists can manage their own finances or their revenues from the work that they are doing. These are disruptive technologies that are impacting heavily on the system. For example, artificial intelligence or virtual reality and augmented reality can alter the content consumption perception now. There is also a lot of things ongoing with 3D printing from some time already for developing new prototypes in less times, etc. But particularly for art, for design improvements. At the same time, there are several aspects that we need to consider here when we talk about digital transformation of creative industries. We are talking about data, and this is something that we need to assess, and particularly most of the countries, they have a very poor, in Africa particularly, and other regions on the developing world, they have a poor systems of statistics to capture particularly the creative industry sector. So this is an area where we need to work more. Education provides a lot of opportunities, particularly for improving digital skills associated to the new technologies, etc. Innovation and business, several platforms has been established within the continent. Then we have value creation, environment, and quality infrastructure. As I mentioned, standards can also play an important role. Then I just wanted to add here that there are also other, let's say, not so recent approaches, but can also provide a good hint on how the sector should be moving, particularly considering more how to linkage local clusters with global buyers. And this is an opportunity within the AFTA trade that we cannot miss. And also, if we consider now how to boost or establish innovation clusters with considering more the market dynamics and the social impacts as the main drivers. There is also from our side, from Unido, we have a concept around how to boost cluster integrations. Yeah, and particularly not considering anymore the sectoral focus rather than to regional integration, where we can interact together. We can put together sectors like agri-food with tourism and creative cultural industries in order to foster what we call it the cross fertilization of innovation between them. And to improve the national, regional regulatory framework, etc. I just want to comment very quickly on some selected examples we have. We recently, from Unido, we launched a creative hub in Ethiopia, the first one equipped with digital equipments like 3D printing machines, laser cutters, etc. And with this creative hub has like three main elements. One is to support creative innovators, particularly designers and MCs in micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises on how to connect with markets, but also to improve the youth innovators, etc. It's also conceived as a sort of platform where several companies and also part of the innovation ecosystem stakeholders can be connected, and to provide a wide range of services, including workshops, training, but also prototyping, pilot experiences, etc. I would like also to bring here the case of Tunisia, where we have a similar creative hubs established there. But what is important here is that we can also link it not the intervention only to the market side, but also on the cultural and how to protect the digital heritage, yeah, with this type of interventions. The other case is from Armenia, and this one is for the textile sector. And within this one, for example, we wanted to strengthen the digital design for preparing new products, for new concepts which are more sustainable with the environment, for example. But also at the same time, we are providing them with better capacities for e-commerce. Last but not least is an example of a project in the music industry in Cuba. We have supported several stakeholders along the value chain of the music industry in the country. With our partners from Sound Diplomacy, they also participated in this one with us. And we have provided access to several digital technologies that allow them to improve the products, but also to enter into the digital market, which is through platforms that were not accessible at the country at that time. On the partnerships and common priorities, I would like to highlight again, as some of the speakers already commented, on the potential of EU engagement in this type of action. For us, is an important actor, and particularly we see some common elements for this type of approach that where the EU experience can be very valuable. Particularly on the establishing of creative hubs and clusters, on promoting digital entrepreneurship and skills, but at the same time for technology transfer, innovation, partnerships, and most particularly on regulatory framework, how to improve standards and regulation, disseminations, and adoption in the countries is a must. At the same time, from the African side, we see a lot of commonalities here, and particularly with the digital transformation strategy for Africa adopted by the African Union, where they see a lot of, or they provide a lot of importance to the IPR and also to the heritage of culture. Yeah, but at the same time, the use of digital technologies for production and exhibition of cultural industry products are very well recognized in the African Union Plan of Action. And yeah, and the AFTA, as I mentioned before, is one of the greatest opportunities that we have to advance the inclusive and sustainable development of creative industries. So on the way forward, I would like just to to provide some ideas here. From Unido side, we understand that there are several opportunities and challenges or barriers that we need to overcome if we really want to take the contribution of creative industries for job creation, for an inclusive and sustainable local or regional development, and using the opportunities of digital transformation. So for that, we see very important if we can do several steps in order to, let's say, including all these elements, mapping the creative industries, strengthen tools and institutions, promote the creative innovation ecosystem of the industries related to the clusters, and also building skills, and last but not least, the foster of IPR regulatory framework, for example, is an action point where we can go. More in general, and this is my last slide, we say that there are two main areas where we will need to work together with all the partners, and particularly to promote sub-regional or regional integration of strategies, of policies on all the partners, statistics, the regulations and standards, etc. On the other side, the other area is to strengthen the creative industry ecosystem, yeah, by adopting several, maybe some areas or action points here, like to realize the commercialization of the creative goods, to provide opportunities for cross-fertilization of innovation between economic actors, but also to promote technology transfer and adoption of innovation skills, etc. This could help us not only to impact on the SDG 9, as my director mentioned it, but also on other SDGs which are very relevant as well for the creative industries, like number 8, decent work and economic growth. Gender equality is also an aspect where we can touch here a lot, and the 11 on sustainable cities and communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. Thank you so much. The examples you provided are really interesting because we can see the impact. We can see that these are concrete achievements with concrete results. Myself, I went to Armenia, and I saw in Armenia the project for the fashion industry, and we really see the impact that project has on the fashion industry. So I'd like to hand over now to Shane Shapiro, the CEO of Sound Diplomacy. I will share my screen, and Shane, you can take over from this point with the panel. Over to you, Shane.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you to all the excellent speakers who've come before. Thank you, Alejandro, for the great presentation. So my name is Shane Shapiro. I run Sound Diplomacy. We work globally with cities and governments on music and entertainment strategy and policy. Thank you so much to Unido and UNCTAD as part of as well the International Year Creative Economy for hosting this event. So we have an amazing panel. So could everyone on the panel please turn on their video so I can see you? That would be lovely. And I'm just noticing the time, so I'm going to try to get through this, but just to our wonderful panel, if you go over time, I will interrupt you. Just saying, everyone has a few, so we just want to make sure that we end on time. And we're going to try to have a bit of a discussion as well, rather than just everyone each speaking. So I just want everyone to very quickly introduce themselves, because I think you'd probably be better introducing yourself than I would introducing you. So first, M, and then Maureen, and then Chi, and then Maria Chiara, and then George. Please just quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll get into some questions. M, you're muted.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First of all, let me say thank you so much to Unido, UNCTAD and Sound Diplomacy for this wonderful panel and the invitation to speak on it. My name is M. Ekong, and I'm here representing the Lagos Cultural Recovery Task Force, which is a co-collaboration of private, public and civil society organizations in Lagos, Nigeria, that have come together to support and develop a post-COVID music recovery plan for Lagos. That's me. Thanks, Shane.
Mm-hmm. And Maureen.
Thank you very much, the organizers, for inviting me on behalf of my organization, the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization, ARIPO, which is a member state-driven organization, and also it has 20 member states. My name is Maureen Fondo. I handle the copyright portfolio. I'm the head of copyright and related rights. And we are glad to be here. ARIPO administers the mandates on intellectual property. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And Chi? Hope I pronounced that right.
Yes, you did. Hi, everyone. My name is Chi Onwuka. I'm the founder of Fabrics NG. Fabrics NG, we're focused on making quality fabric sourcing easier and more efficient for fashion and creative brands that use textiles in their production for their manufacturing. So our core mission is to grow local textile and fashion manufacturing by providing support to especially emerging and independent designers. So thank you.
Great. Maria Chiara?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And first of all, thanks to the organizers, Unido and UNCTAD, for this very timely and appropriate discussion, for the choice of the topic, and for inviting us. And also thanks to Shane and Sound Diplomacy. Happy to be here with you after many occasions where we have already cooperated. I represent the European Commission, DG EAC, Education and Culture, and in particular the one unit on cultural policies. I am specifically in charge of the topic of cultural heritage and sustainable development, and I'm happy to be in this discussion because it's really linked to one of my main areas of work in this field, particularly leading one OMC group, an open methods method of coordination working group of member states on the topic of the cultural dimension in sustainable development. So I will really appreciate this exchange. And the other area, just to introduce you briefly, my fields, where I work on is the one on research for cultural heritage. So it's a horizontal topic that we deal with in our unit, but it's a very much, let's say, cross-cutting issue for which we cooperate with other services in the Commission, and particularly with research and innovation. So this is also very linked to parts of the points that were discussed in the first presentation. So I'm very happy about that. Thank you.
Great. And last but not least, George.
Thank you, Shane Shapiro, for inviting my participation. Thank you, colleagues. My name is George Gashara. I am here representing HEVA Fund. HEVA Fund is one of the leading investment firms in Africa, specializing in creative industries. We have 3 operations. One is investments. We've made investments in over 100 businesses, covering, we began in Kenya, we covered 5 countries in the region, and now we are making, we're moving capital to 14 countries in the Eastern Board of Africa. And hopefully soon, within a short period, maybe we'll be able to do most of the continent. We also provide direct business support to creative and culture businesses. And we also lead in knowledge creation and research services. I'm glad to be here, and I'm also glad to listen and learn from my colleagues from around the continent.
Great, thank you. An incredibly diverse panel. Just as the moderator, if anyone has a question, just put it into the Q&A box or raise your hand. I'm moderating or looking at the Q&A box. So if the question, I may just interrupt our panelists and go to the audience question, you never know. But please, this is about you guys as much as it's about us. Okay, so I've got a couple questions for each of you, but let's see if we can have a bit of a conversation around this. So I'm going to start with M, and I know that you also work in Ghana and the UK and Nigeria, but can you kind of explain what the activities of both your work in Lagos and in Ghana, which I know is very similar, what's the point of it, frankly, and how do you feel that and how do you feel that kind of you can utilize digital technologies to accelerate the the development of the creative industries, or in this case music, that you're working on in Lagos and Accra and other places?
Well, thank you very much, Shane, again for the introduction. I'll probably start a little bit about talking about the work with the Lagos Culture Recovery Task Force, and then contextualize it into the wider West Africa market. As you said earlier, I run an organization called Urban Inclusion Community. I'm Nigerian diaspora. My company started in 2006 in London, and during the 2012 Olympics, we ran a big event around how we support the diaspora community, support and invest in their local communities. And obviously one of the hugest sectors of opportunities around creative industries. But after that 2012 event, one of the things that captured my imagination and my drive was we ended up opening representative offices in both Lagos and Accra to specifically drive local development, local economic development and business development programs. So effectively in 2020, in the midst of our awful pandemic, we set up the Lagos Culture Recovery Task Force, which is actually a network, a collaborative partnership made up of Temple Management Company, which is a Lagos-based music industry support agency, which supports artists, musicians, and entertainment sector through training, capacity building, business development, and support. organizations in social research. We've also had fantastic support. Shane, your team, thank you so much. Sound Diplomacy and Centre for Music Ecosystems have also provided a tremendous amount of support to us to kind of build momentum and to build our goals around what it is we want to do post-COVID-19 and create a recovery plan for Lagos, particularly focused on musicians. There are similar situations in both Lagos and Accra, being at the heart of West Africa. I think we all know, and many of our presenters have also stated very clearly, there is so much potential in Lagos. And this word potential is something that, as a diaspora, drives me mad, because we want to see this potential actualized, because the richness that you have in both cities like Lagos and cities like Accra is tremendous. And this is where we have jumped on the opportunity to look at, okay, how do we work better with states? How do we work better with local communities in order to drive development for the sector? So, excuse me. So basically, our main goals of the Alliance are to advocate, communicate, and support the development of a more impactful music ecosystem, building on data. And we've heard already, data. I don't think I'm going to be the only person that mentions it. I'm sure we've heard it all already, but that's one of our biggest challenges that you're going to have in both in West Africa. And we've heard even Alexandra saying that there are programs that they can mention that happen in the northern part of Africa, Southern Africa, great interventions, but we don't have as much, we don't see as much. I think it's probably better to say visibility is not as much in, say, Sub-Saharan Africa, but there is a richness there that is quite incredible. And we want to create tangible solutions that support job creation and entrepreneurship within this sector.
Yeah, it's a great kind of segue to you, Maureen. I met a couple of colleagues from Lagos came to London, and one of them had a T-shirt that said Lagos, entertainment capital of Africa. And, I can't disagree with that. And then he's like, we're the same as London and LA. We're a global entertainment capital. And that's true. But one of the things that is lacking in some regards is the recognition in the same way of intellectual property rights. And Alejandro saying, or Patrick saying that the creative economies were 3% of the global economy, I think it's worth more than that if we actually counted everything. So I'm curious, Maureen, if you could kind of dig into the work that you guys do in relation to the socio-economic and cultural developments of the states that you work in, and kind of how Aripo is working to develop the role of intellectual property and digital technologies in the 20 countries that you're working in. Oh, and you're muted.
Thank you very much, Shapiro. As alluded earlier, Aripo is an intergovernmental organization, and we are a member state-driven organization. Currently, there are 20 member states who are spread from the Southern, East, Central, and West African countries. And we also have potential member states, of which amongst the potential we have Nigeria and South Africa. So as Aripo, we receive mandates, and these mandates are with regard to intellectual property. And we have protocols, that is the legal framework, which enable us to implement the mandates given unto us by the member states. And we have the Harare Protocol for patents and industrial designs and utility models. We also have the Banjul Protocol for trademarks. And we have also the Arusha Protocol for plant varieties. And we have the Swakopmund Protocol for traditional knowledge and expressions and cultural expressions. And we also have the latest protocol, that is the Kampala Protocol on voluntary registration of copyright and related rights. So with these legal frameworks, we are able to facilitate the pooling resources together for our member states' benefit. But we go beyond our member states and also engage the potential member states in our activities. So it has been said by previous speakers about the creative sector that it contributes to wealth and also job creation. And there are a lot of evidence which goes with that. We see also in the WIPO studies within the ARIPO member states, we have a few countries who have undertaken such study with the assistance of WIPO. And we have Kenya, we have Malawi, we have Botswana, and we have Tanzania. And from these ones, we see that the contribution to GDP ranges from 3 to 5 percent. Like Botswana, it goes 5.46. So all these are things which show that indeed creative economy can really drive the countries. But due to the COVID that all of us experienced, it plummeted the economy, and there was the social fabric turn, which was torn apart, and also it affected a lot of creative sectors. But we thank the ingenuity of these creative minds, how they came about to circumvent all this, and they used the digital technologies which were available. So having this, we see that they could connect with their fans, whether if it's on the video or if it's on the audio streams, or if it is on the live performances, and selling out of maybe artworks through digital platforms, and even enabling people to visit these digital platforms for the museums, maybe just to see the exhibitions and all that, as much as it went to make some people lose their jobs and others trying to, come up with other ways of living. So as ARIPO, we thank most of the member states' governments who came out and supported the creative sectors because of what they were experiencing, not being able to receive the maybe usual also royalties that they have, that they used to receive due to the maybe closure of theaters or even on cinemas and the like. So knowledge-based economy, we all look at it as accelerating development. And it is encouraging to see that in the constitutions of some of the African countries acknowledge intellectual property by having provisions within the constitution that speak to it. And this shows the political will within the ARIPO member states and the African countries that we need that political will to change our situation. So revenue generation, job creation, and a lot of reports have come up giving out ideas on how best we can be able to circumvent all these challenges and take advantage of the digital opportunities within this era. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Maureen. And we always say, I come from the music industry, so a song can be a pension, right? That's very important to think. It creates mailbox money that just arrives in the mail. But Chi, I know nothing about fashion other than I appreciate it, but it's incredible what you're doing with Fabrics NG, and I'm just curious kind of how you're using digital technologies to improve fabric sourcing, and understanding kind of how that how digitization is impacting African textiles and the fashion business, and the growth and opportunities that are coming up from recovery and post-COVID.
Oh, thank you, Shane. I hope everyone can hear me now. I heard my speaker was a bit rusty. So as I mentioned earlier, our core mission at Fabrics NG is to grow local textile and fashion manufacturing by providing support to emerging and independent designers. So you may wonder, why is that a big deal? And does it really matter how fabric is being sourced? Well, fabric sourcing is basically how your fabric is obtained. And as a creative or fashion brand, is integral to your design process or your general value chain. So to minimize production inefficiencies, you have two major fabric sourcing problems to contend with. The first major problem is knowledge of the required fabric to bring your creative ideas to life. So surprisingly, we discovered that fabric education was a huge barrier to efficiency in fabric consumption. So things such as knowing the fiber composition, fabric behavior to dyes, heat, thermal response, structure of the garment after construction, durability of the garment, functionality, etc., that sort of thing. So understanding fabrics is super important to your continued success as a fashion brand. Then the second major problem after determining the type of fabric you actually need for production is the actual sourcing. So that is knowing available and accessible fabric sourcing suppliers or manufacturing. So considering the annual billions spent in sub-Saharan Africa on apparel and fabrics, so it's unbelievable that there is no organized infrastructure for fabric sourcing. We only have very disorganized informal markets that make fabric sourcing very cumbersome and time consuming and frankly expensive. So for fabric sourcing to make any business sense, it must be sourced in one, a cost-effective manner. So that means that both the pricing, the quality, the logistics cost, it must make financial sense so that you're able to compete effectively in the global fashion market, right? And then the second is that it must be sourced in a timely manner. So that means that your delivery lead time should make sense. And then again, it should be sourced in an ethical, sustainable manner that doesn't conflict with your company values. So to solve these problems, our solution at Fabrics NG involved digitalization of that fabric sourcing value chain. We started first with online fabric education, so that digital breakdown of the fabric. So for you to understand what the fiber composition is, the fabric characteristics and behavior. So we provide online fabric consultation and physical swatches and samples where necessary or requested. Then the second is networking of people by designing a structured marketplace for thousands of verified fabric suppliers that are selling these fabrics at competitive pricing to the designers that require them. And then the next is, of course, progressive automation of the entire sourcing value chain to make it more cost effective, timely, data driven, and seamless. And then finally, of course, increasing individualization using sustainable and cost effective solutions like providing fabric customization using more eco-friendly dyes. And then I'll propose the digital textile printers, which use less water and energy and creates less waste in general.
Thank you very much. I personally find it incredibly fascinating, but it's so important. Again, really understanding how to digitize, how to improve sourcing, frankly, of any resource makes it more sustainable. And so, Marie, it's a bit of now we're turning back to Europe for a second with you, Maria Chiara, and I've been very lucky to work with your team for many years, full of amazing people at AAC, Education and Culture, and one of your programs is Music Moves Europe. And one of the things is Europe has kind of doubled down on culture in the most recent budget, and also doubled down on the SDGs and sustainability. And I know you cover a lot of different things, but I'm kind of curious if you could just go through a little bit of the measures that AAC has taken to engage recovery. What you think some of the most effective measures have been, and then linking it a little bit to the work that you guys are doing with third countries or African countries across the creative industries.
Okay, I'll try to be condensed, although it's a large topic. As you said correctly, we have doubled down the budget for culture in many respects. First of all, we have increased indeed of 50% the budget of Creative Europe. And for the next 7 years, Creative Europe will have a budget of 2.5 nearly billion euros. This is one of the biggest achievements of the recent months and of the engagement towards the cultural sector, coupling, let's say, the efforts that we were already committed to before the pandemic with the recovery measures and the support that we gave towards the sector in many respects during the pandemic. And I would like to stress in this sense that we believe that, of course, there is a need, and that's why we acted in this way, for increased budget lines and availability of funding from Europe, but also that the work that we have done during this month to facilitate the sector towards, for example, a number of calls that have been postponed in terms of deadlines or that have been retargeted to specific needs of the sector, and also the dialogue that we have incentivized with the sector. For example, I would like to mention something that goes also very much in line with the needs of the sector that we consider more and more linked to also issues that have to do with the sustainability and also with the contribution of the sector to sustainable development goals. Of course, as I mentioned, we have set up this new collaboration platform among member states, this expert group that is focusing primarily on better ways to integrate cultural policies into the sustainable development strategies. So this sort of sectorial dialogue, but also intergovernmental dialogue that we have facilitated as Commission, which has led us also to add a priority in the work plan for culture. This was ahead of the COVID pandemic, but it fell as very, very timely and appropriate. This priority is called culture as a driver for sustainable development. So as you said, we are also doubling our effort in this direction. And speaking of digital needs, we are trying to also mainstream these aspects in many actions across different programs. So, for example, I work on research domain linked to culture. The new Horizon Europe program is also very encouraging for the culture and creative industries and sectors, because it has included an additional pillar, let's say, area of intervention under Cluster 2, which is the cooperative research pillar for industrial competitiveness. And we have specifically also increased the budget of research for culture and creativity by adding this intervention area in Cluster 2, which is called research and innovation for culture and creative industries and for cultural heritage. And within this, we have included topics that have a lot to do with facilitating and researching on the needs and on the capacity of the sector for using digital technologies, also green technologies, and combining, let's say, the focus on the digital transition and ways to help the sector to adapt and to exchange partnerships and research focuses on digitization as much as on sustainability. So to summarize, I would say that our efforts went in both the direction of reinforcing the financial envelopes and on creating platforms and more, let's say, opportunities also horizontally for the sector. And one of these actions that I also wanted to emphasize is the creation of a platform which is called Creatives Unite, which is the result of combined, let's say, funding from Creative Europe, but also funding coming from the sector. So it's not owned by the Commission, but it's been facilitated by the Commission, and it's been created in cooperation with the sector. So this role of leveraging the potential and the capacity building of the sector towards the digital realm is also done through our means of creating and helping helping the creation of platforms like this Creatives Unite, which is working very well because it gives the opportunity to create partnerships and to mutually cooperate online among professionals, among creatives, among artists. And this is also, of course, a tool that goes hand in hand with our longer originated cooperation with third countries, and particularly as far as Africa is concerned, actions like Music Moves Europe or ACP cultural cooperation programs, in which we have a specific windows and projects which have also used the HEVA fund that has been mentioned earlier, and our capacity of programs to invest on diversity, on talents, or on creativity and innovation towards the market of the African culture and creative industries is part of the strategy.
Great, you've given me a great segue, Maria-Caras, onto you, George. And what I get from the European Commission, it's investment and collaboration, right? Investment and collaboration. Those are the two main things: money and working together. But when we talk about money, what are you're the one, George, you're the one investing in companies. So what are you looking for, first off, and how do you measure, where to simply put your investments, and what are you looking for in relation to adopting digital technologies and the types of companies that you're keen to prioritize at the HEVA Fund?
Thank you. Those are three heavy questions.
I know, and you have 5 minutes, so go for it.
That all could invite a public lecture in and of itself. So I'll try and be concise. I really won't emphasize what my colleagues have because the context for this conversation has already been set very eloquently from a collaborations perspective set out by M and Esposito, from a farm level perspective set out by Chi, from a legal perspective covered by Maureen of Aripo. So I'll go straight to what I think is a uniquely HEVA perspective. So as we sit in the third decade of the 21st century, Africa is quite a dynamic space right now. Unlike other decades, we're listening to ourselves, we're enjoying our music, we're watching our films, we like how we sound. There's growing enthusiasm, there's dynamism amongst young and old people who are celebrating being themselves, being African across the region. A few decades back, the story was different. We just had a few upstarts who are celebrated in continents away from ours by people who necessarily don't consume works from them. But now if you look at every genre of work, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's fashion, gaming, interior and home design, toys and crafts, literature, there's a renaissance happening. But this renaissance is driven by many young, fledgling businesses that are run by individuals who are self-financed, who have quit a formal job to start a side hustle, and they are countless, even thousands and hundreds of thousands across cities, across the continent. In my view, any artistic production, any renaissance, any dynamism or whatever reading we are having of the continent, the reading could be called Nollywood or Bongowood, the reading could be called Kwaito or Deep House, African House, Safari House, whatever reading we assign to this renaissance is driven by individuals who are mostly obscure from public sector finance, because only a few countries invest taxpayers' money in supporting creative production directly. And this is the likes of the MENA-facing countries and South Africa as an example. And very few in between, like Kenya and Tanzania, which are smaller economies. But most of our resources self-financed. If you look at private sector investment, the private sector investment that is in Africa doesn't look like necessarily like the American version or the European version, where there's a venture capitalist who's interested in a few upshoots, and they pump in numerous rounds of investment infinitely, and then they sell that business. That's a growing genre of money. The money that exists in this economy is bootstrapping money. It's family money, is own financing, own savings. And so we realized in the absence of private sector investment in that organized way, in the commercial sense of things, and in the absence of government grants and programmatic expenditure, the only people who remained active in that space were the cultural partners, the GOTEs, the British councils, the EU, the French, the Portuguese, who had short-term programs that only invested in short-term programs. And so for us to think about investment in the third century going forward, in the third decade going forward, we need to create local mechanisms that continue to resource startups that grow into middle tier businesses, and that you provide another round of financing that's tailored to growth to make these entities grow and create more opportunities and create stable value chains that allow our creative sector to sophisticate. So HIVA is one such example, and I hope that the continent will create as many examples as possible of financing mechanisms that respond to local needs. For us, we've been able to invest in over 100 businesses in more than 5 genres, providing financing from seed financing to growth financing in numerous models. We are not restricted to debt only. We provide equity, we provide pseudo-equity, mezzanine, leases, or whatever type of prescription of financing interventions to allow our fledgling sectors and our growing awareness to thrive. When we connect this to digital, I would dare say that that as HIVA Fund, we've tested our hand at digital, and this is setting a basis for my intervention. We've financed platforms, payment platforms. Payment platforms are critical because how media is consumed, how creative products are consumed, they're consumed on micropayments basis. And we do not have as many credit cards. So this is mobile phone based consumption, microtransactions. So platform and payment gateways are important. We also think that distribution platforms shouldn't be only the Netflix of our day, however much we like them. We should also create local platforms that understand our language, our vernaculars, and that the algorithms are closer to our identity and our thinking. We've invested in gaming and gaming development. We've helped businesses that make products that are not digital to adopt digital technologies in their inventory management, in their till management, in their business record management to increase efficiency and manage their cash flows better. We've supported festivals and awards that celebrate excellence in digital and digital adoption. We've invested in AR and VR research through universities and technical universities in Kenya and Uganda to allow these technologies to start being used by amateurs and students so that they can be localized. We are supporting a university, a college to do an animation lab. And we can go on and on around our portfolio of investments, thanks to our partners in Europe and our partners local. But what is important is to start to recognize that there's technology, then there's creative technology, and then there's human interactions in technology. And these are all interventions that are critical to allow sort of a sustainable digital adoption. When we think about deep tech, this is where we need more skills around programming, coding, artificial intelligence, NFTs and blockchain kind of things. And these are critical tools for the future of creative industries. I'll give you an example. If you want to listen to a playlist on Spotify of women musicians in Africa, I don't think there's an algorithm that can find you amazing women music from the continent. Someone needs to figure out deep tech that understands that kind of music business. On the createch side, other than just the deep tech, we need more people to play around with AR and VR, animation, gaming development, micro content development, because that is the front-facing side of technology, and as far as audiences are concerned. But on the, have I finished my 5 minutes?
Yeah, well, we're 1 minute over right now, but just finish up and then we'll, you're right, by the way, in terms of deep tech. So yeah.
Yes, and so to speak, I would say that that we cannot ignore the place of technology in the future of the evolution of creative industries in Africa, given that Africa is mobile first. Africa is average 19-year-olds. We have in the eastern side, we have 650 million 19-year-olds. Those are digital natives. And so as Hiva Fund, we are deliberate around moving resources, experimental resources, tailored resources towards ventures that can be able to take small bites of this big challenge. Thank you.
I think that you summarized it. First off, we could chat for a lot longer than 45 minutes together on this. But, this is an incredibly young digital, internet, digital natives, there's such huge opportunities in digital technologies in the creative economy in Africa, let alone in the entire world, so long as we invest in digital and invest in culture like we invest in any other sector. So I want to thank you guys so much. I got one question over to each of you, so we got there, and thank you so much for joining us. For all the audience that wants to learn more, please obviously visit everyone's websites. And Patrick, I'm going to hand it back to you to close us out.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you so much, and thank you to all the panelists and the participants. I see this is a large group, and this is a large topic with a big potential for development. And I see here a big family, so the family of the creative economy. So I'd like to ask you, in fact, to switch on your camera so we can take a picture of all of us. It will be the family picture. And in the meantime, I'd like to give the opportunity to Frédéric and Mio, whether they are still here, and to say a few words at the end. So Frédéric first, and then Mio, you will be welcome to conclude. Frédéric, over to you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, dear panelists. This was really amazing. I would briefly like to maybe point out a few issues that we can take forward, or how we can actually move forward. Before I do that, let me start with two good pieces of good news. One, I think, is that the creative industries are on the rise. We started a few years ago with first studies on the orange economy, so-called orange economy. And here we are with a UN year, International Year on Creative Industries, plus, for example, the G20 have also included culture now in their agenda. And this understanding that was also shared by Maria Chiara Esposito is to combine culture and sustainable development, and to actually see how it can contribute to economic development, how it can contribute to even climate change, and how you actually, sorry, I think we have a noise here. With that in mind, the other good news is, of course, that we can use this whole digital world to our advantage, that we can actually come together in the digital world. I think, sorry, we have an alarm going off here right now in the office. I will try to ignore it. I hope it's not too disturbing. Let me just briefly acknowledge, George, what you said from the HEVA Fund. We are partners, we cooperate together in Kenya. You will be actually organizing a business training for 90 creative entrepreneurs for us. And I totally agree what you say on having more vernacular platforms, vernacular films in Africa, and to get those female African musicians on Spotify. And many of these measures that we're taking now are really first aid to the sector because of the corona pandemic. So we need to keep that in mind, that we need to bring together the funds with the training. We work with the African Digital Media Institute in Kenya, where we actually help musicians bring their work to digital platforms. And I'd like to quote Shane again, a song can be a pension. That is a very good way to put it. And finally, let me just say, what could be the way forward? I think we need a political initiative at the UN level. So perhaps this International Year of Creative Industries could actually be finalized with a roadmap of how to take this whole topic and sector further in order to generate more political commitment. I would also suggest a pilot project to collect data. I very much agree with the colleague who said we need more data to make our case, to make the argument with ministers of finance and economy. And that pilot project should also help a few partners to implement specific policies in the creative sector, like, for example, establishing film funds. We worked with the Kenyan Film Commission on this idea already. We need to bring in the private sector. So perhaps there could be a private sector forum organized by UNCTAD, or even better, why not bring the topic of creative industries to the World Economic Forum? And of course, we need to deal with trade barriers. And I'm looking towards the EU for that with respect to intellectual property. I will stop here now, and I apologize very much if you can hear the noise in the background. It's an alarm going off, I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to give the last word to Mio from UNCTAD. Mio, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone for a very exciting discussion. And it was really nice that there are so many actual activities on the ground. And at this stage, I just would like to say that, as we all know, that this year is the International Year of Creative Economy. Once again, I just shared the link for the website. As you know, that this is a kind of the reservoir of so many ideas and initiatives, activities, or related to the International Year of Creative Economy. You can find them. And I just would like to thank Mr. Helscher for an excellent idea for, to conclude this international year, to come up with some concrete roadmap and to enhance. It's not really to do a new thing, but I think what we really need to do is to enhance this horizontal network, the stakeholder network, to bring things together. And I'm sure there are some challenges and maybe already some solutions or answers are existing somewhere else. We are just not connected. So on this note, once again, I want to thank you very much. And I'm sure that this is a concrete step for our continuing collaboration in this very important subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is the beginning of cooperation, and I once again thank so much all the panelists and all the participants for this session. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.